during Hurricane Katrina. During Katrina, global oil rig number 13 exploded into flames, killed all 22 crew members aboard, well, except for one survivor. And about 3 weeks later, a rework crew was sent out to rework the rig, and the one survivor went back with them. And this is a conversation between one of the reworkers and the survivor, whose name was Waters. "You guys think I'm crazy, don't you?" Jeff was surprised by Waters' questions and didn't know how to answer. He didn't want to antagonize Waters, yet felt he would know somehow if he lied. "Some of you guys do," he answered truthfully. "Me? I don't judge too quickly." Waters nodded. "That's good. I didn't believe in ghosts until I came back here after the fires. When Trey called me on the field radio and told me what was happening, I didn't believe him at first. It just didn't make any sense. I knew Digger Man. When I saw it, all the death and destruction, I thought Digger Man had gone postal or something. He had been out for over 3 months, except for a couple of days back in New Orleans. It's been known to happen," he said, looking at Jeff defensively. "When I got here and saw what Digger Man had done," he shook his head and closed his eyes as memories hurt too badly. I couldn't believe it. Bodies were everywhere. Some I couldn't recognize, men I'd worked with for months. The cruise shack." He glanced at the blackened scar where the module that had served as the cruise quarters had set. The outline of the portable building still remained etched on the concrete deck after the charred bodies had been picked up. Excuse me. Concrete deck, but the module itself had been washed overboard during the hurricane. Only a few of the charred bodies had been picked up later, floating in the Gulf. "What happened?" Jeff asked. "I heard the rig caught fire." Waters swayed and moaned. He shook his head so violently that Jeff thought he might hurt himself. Digger Man connected the automatic sprinkler system to the natural gas distillate lines before triggering the fire alarm. 8 guys, the entire night tour, burned alive in their bunks. Jeff swallowed hard, looking at the blackened foundations where the crew quarters had stood, trying to imagine their inconceivable horror as Waters continued. There were bodies scattered everywhere, hacked open and dismembered, parts of bodies and bloody trail of guts everywhere. Waters put his hands over his eyes and sobbed. "I found Digger Man hanging from the crane. He had run steel rods through his chest and hands and attached them with cables to the hook, and then disemboweled himself and used the remote to lift himself 20 feet into the air. His eyes were missing, but he stared down at me like he could see deep into my soul. I didn't find everybody's bodies and hoped some of the guys got away in the escape crowd, but I found it later in the rack. I guess he tossed their bodies overboard, or maybe they just got scared and jumped, taking their chances with the hurricane." Waters looked up at Jeff as if judging whether to continue. "They were all dead, but there was something here, something invisible, lurking in the shadows, following my every move. I could feel it watching me as I stumbled around in shock. I could feel it in the rain, hear it in the thunder. I could smell it even over the horrible stench of death. It smelled of old graves and ancient tombs, of musty rooms and locked basements. It smelled like you imagine hell would smell, sulfurous and stupefying. There's lots of sulfur in these old wells," Jeff reminded him. Waters shook his head negatively. "I know. I've seen the piles of sulfur at Port Sulphur over in Plaquemine Parish before, but this was different. It was sulfur after it had been burned a long time, like since the beginning of time maybe, or brimstone." Waters' eyes glazed over for a moment, and Jeff thought he had slipped over the edge into insanity, if he was not already there. As if reading his mind, Waters glanced up and said quietly, "They put me under psychological observation in the hospital after they picked me up, drifting in my boat 3 days after the hurricane. I told them that I had found what I'd found, and they thought I was crazy, delusional from the shock, like combat fatigue. When they got back to the rig and found Digger Man and the others, I think at first they suspected me. Finally, they concluded that Digger Man had gone mad. They had somehow killed a few of the crew and the rest had died during the storm. Global invented the fire rig story in order to cover up the insurance company's investigation. It wouldn't look too good in their quarterly report to have 21 murders." Jeff could understand Waters' unbalanced emotional state, even commiserate with him. But one question bothered him. Why did you come back here? Because he's not finished yet. Digger man? Waters shook his head. No, not the digger man. They buried his body with the others. He was the 22nd victim. No, I mean whoever or whatever took over his body that day. He comes to me in my dreams sometimes, trying to make me do things, horrible things. I can't see him, but I know he's here, inside. Waters touched his chest, gently at first, but quickly clawing as if in an attempt to dig out his misery. I told the doc once, and they said it was survivor's guilt, like I didn't think I was worthy of surviving and needed to die with my buddies. A shudder ran down Waters' body. I held out as long as I could, but I know it's no good. He wants me here as a witness. A witness for what, Jeff says. Waters stared at him before replying. Your deaths, all of you. He wants me too, but last, so I can witness his resurrection. He laughed. Lucky 13, that's what we call this damn rig. Hell rig is what we should call it now. Look at it. It looks like a black skeleton of the Grim Reaper striding the depths, seeking lost souls to drag down into the briny deep. Save yourself, boy. Take the girl and leave this place. Your souls are unblemished, protected. I can see that. The others? He shook his head. Have you ever thought about shadows and light? I have a lot since that day. I think maybe we have it all wrong with our science and technology. Shadows aren't places where the light doesn't penetrate, a byproduct of the interplay of light on an object. That's too passive, too mundane. I believe it's the other way around. Light is just the absence of shadows. There was darkness before there was light, wasn't there? In the Bible, I mean. Have you ever wondered what lived in those shadows? There are shadows in the universe as large as galaxies. Half the universe is dark matter. What do you think it is? He looked at Jeff expectantly. Jeff responded, I haven't given it much thought. I guess cold gases? Matter left over from the Big Bang? Waters looked at Jeff, and he could swear he saw shadows dancing in Waters' eyes. The big murder, I think. When some other universe died to create this stinking corpse we live in. Maybe dark matter is real and the rest of the universe, the one we live in, is just a projection, a reverse shadow. Waters grabbed Jeff's arm and squeezed hard. Jeff tried to pull away, but Waters' grip was intense, unbreakable. Stay away from the shadows, Towns. They're alive and they're hungry. With a solid yank, Jeff pulled free and backed away, staring at Waters. He walked quickly back to the main blockhouse, leaving Waters alone. He considered telling Ed about Waters, but did not want to get the man in trouble. After all that Waters had suffered, anyone could be a little off his rocker. He felt a little sorry for the man and more than a little frightened by him. He glanced up at the crane and for a split second thought he saw a dark shadow dangling from the cable. He rubbed his eyes and shook his head. Trick of the sun, he said to himself. That's it.